Good morning. For this morning's stakeholder session, we'd like to present a general disclaimer for this presentation. The information within this presentation is slated to facilitate discussions on various existing and potential regulatory mechanisms. No final decision regarding this information is expressed or implied by the department. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to say good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us this morning for our stakeholder series. My name is Judith Andraco. I'm the Regulatory Officer for the Site Remediation and Waste Management Program. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting series for PL 2020 Chapter 24, which is an act concerning food waste recycling and food waste to energy production. I'm your moderator for today's presentation. I ask that you please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation, and we ask that you only use the chat function if you are experiencing technical issues, except for the fact that we would like you to put your full name in the chat so that we are able to mark you as attending this presentation. We want to make sure that we have the most correct updated attendee list that we can get. So we'd ask that you put your name in the chat. And if you're having any technical problems with Teams, whether you're having problems with your video link, your audio link, or other technical issues, please put that information in the chat, as we will have staff available to hopefully attend to your technological needs. Next slide. Just as a reminder, we'd like to talk about the in-house rules. Where you're putting your name in the chat function. I see many of you are doing that now. Thank you so much. If you've dialed into the meeting, we ask that you email reducefoodwaste@dep.nj.gov to let us know that you attended. We're not able to identify the names of dialed in attendees. Next slide. With the virtual format of this stakeholder session, I'd like to go over a little bit of our MS Teams logistics. Again, for the chat function, it's for technical difficulties only and as an attendance sheet, so we know that you're here. We ask that you use the raise your hand function. Raise your hand if you have a comment or question. After the presenter concludes different parts of the presentation, I'll be selecting persons to speak based upon the time of when you put your hand up. When you're selected to speak, we ask that you unmute your microphone and lower your hand. In the interest of time, since I believe that we have about 3 hours for this session, staff members may interject into the discussion with the cue to keep us on schedule to make sure that we're able to get everything in. And we will wrap up the discussion and move on to the next part of the presentation if we do end up going a little bit over our projected time. Next slide. The goals of the meeting today are pretty simple. We want to hear from you, the industry experts, and our local and county partners on how to improve our rules. Our experience is that the final product, the rule that's proposed, is often far superior if inputs received from individuals with diverse perspectives. As our moderator, I will provide direction to ensure that all present have an opportunity to provide input and comment and to keep us on track. Next slide. Today's agenda includes opening remarks and introductions of our rule team, an overview of the food waste law, and a discussion of food waste, focusing on what are your current methods of measuring food waste, your recycling methods, record keeping and reporting, current and potential challenges with the advent of the new law, the waiver process, a general discussion and general comments, and closing remarks. Next slide. I'd like to introduce our rulemaking team. Most of us are with you today. Again, my name is Judith Andraco. I'm the Regulatory Officer for the Site Remediation and Waste Management Program. We have Scott Brubaker, our Deputy Director, Seth Hackman, Bureau Chief, Jill Aspinwall, a Section Chief, Sonia Silcox, Standards and Procedures Tech, Dana Lawson, Supervisor, Rakesh Patel, Environmental Engineer, Chris Michaelwitz, Environmental Specialist, Julia Garcia, Environmental Services Trainee, Dylan O'Brien, Environmental Services Trainee, and from our Air Quality and Environmental Sustainability Program, we have Rupa Deshmukh, Research Scientist, and Emily DeMeo, Environmental Specialist. Welcome. Good to see you guys today. Next slide. I'd like to introduce Dana Lawson, who will be continuing our discussion today about food waste.
Thank you, Judy. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here, and I thank you all very much for being a part of so much important work. I look forward to learning a great deal that can help us move forward as we draft our food waste recycling rules. So let's begin. As you may or may not know, large amounts of greenhouse gases are emitted in the farming, transporting, manufacturing, and disposing of food that is wasted. Ultimately, reducing and recycling food waste can help you save money. It can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, highlight that you are environmentally responsible, and perhaps improve your business image. What you see on your screen is the Environmental Protection Agency's food recovery hierarchy, which prioritizes actions that organizations can take to prevent and divert wasted food. Each tier of the food recovery hierarchy focuses on different management strategies for your wasted food. The first focus is on reducing the volume of surplus food generated. Next, any edible surplus food should be redirected to people and then to animals. Only after taking steps to reduce the amount of excess food generated. The next option to manage discarded food is to recycle food into a beneficial product such as compost or biogas rather than dispose of it as solid waste. The least favorable option is to dispose of food waste in a landfill or incinerator. The department, or NJDEP, as I will refer to us, is currently working on adopting a plan to reduce food waste according to EPA's food recovery hierarchy. Next slide, please. And at the same time we are working to reduce food waste, we were tasked with implementing the recycling of food waste through Public Law 2020, Chapter 24, the Food Waste Recycling Law, which requires large food waste generators to separate their food waste from the rest of their solid waste and recycle the food waste portion subject to the parameters in the law. So the law. Beginning almost 2 months ago on October 14th, each food waste generator that generates an average projected volume of 52 or more tons per year of food waste and is located within 25 road miles of an authorized, of an authorized food waste recycling facility must source separate its food waste from solid waste. So any large food waste generator that, I'll just go back to the start, that generates an average projected volume of 52 or more tons per year of food waste and is located within 25 road miles of an authorized food waste recycling facility must source separate its food waste from other solid waste and send the source separated food waste to an authorized food waste recycling facility that has available capacity and will accept it. The law requires that we, the DEP, adopt rules and regulations necessary to implement and help clarify the law. Amongst other things, the rule will spell out the process by which the large food waste generators may petition the department for a waiver of the requirements of the law. The law establishes a food waste recycling market development council whose members will be appointed by the governor, and the council will ultimately investigate existing markets, prepare a report, and provide recommendations on how to stimulate the market for products and energy produced from food waste recycling and alternative methods of handling the food waste. Next slide, please. So what is food waste? Food waste is defined in the law, and it means food processing vegetative waste, food processing residue generated from processing and packaging operations, overripe produce, trimmings from food, food product overruns from food processing, soiled and unrecyclable paper generated from processing, and used cooking fats, oil, and grease. Next slide, please. And these are the types of establishments required to source, separate, and recycle their foods. New Jersey's food waste recycling law calls these businesses large food waste generators. A large food waste generator, as defined by the law, means any commercial food wholesaler, distributor, industrial food processor, supermarket, resort, conference center, banquet hall, restaurant, educational or religious institution, military installation, prison, hospital, medical facility, or casino that produces at least 52 tons per year of food waste. Next slide, please. As a large food waste generator, it is your responsibility to determine how much food waste your establishment generates per year. And if you project to generate an average of at least 52 tons of food waste per year, determine the distance to the nearest authorized food waste recycling facility. These authorized facilities are known as Class C recycling centers in New Jersey. And by name, one is called Trenton Renewable Power, located in Trenton, and the other is Waste Management Corps in Elizabeth. And just for your information, there is no A901 license requirement for haulers that transport source separated food waste destined for recycling. Anyhow, if you are a large food waste generator located within 25 road miles of either of these facilities, beginning October 14th of this year, you are required to source, separate, and send your food waste to one of those facilities, or you may choose to manage your source separated food waste by performing on-site composting, anaerobic or aerobic digestion in accordance with NJTEP rules, or by using an alternative authorized food waste recycling method as authorized by DEP. If the authorized food waste recycling facility that is located within 25 road miles from you does not have capacity or is unwilling to accept your source separated food waste, you may send your food waste for disposal to a solid waste facility pursuant to the district solid waste management plan in which the waste was generated. It is our hope that today or through stakeholdering, we can discuss and at least begin the process of identifying essential qualities of alternative methods of food waste recycling and ironing out other details during the relevant topic discussion throughout this meeting. Food waste is a complex system, and the DEP wants to understand and address the challenges at the outset so that we may develop a high-quality rule. And for that, we seek your input. You are the boots on the ground, already doing this business. And in order for these rules to be practical, environmentally sound, economically feasible, make sense, protect you, and be more beneficial than burdensome to your business, we need to hear from you. You are the subject matter experts. So I ask for your participation today, and I totally get it. If you're less comfortable speaking, but you have comments that you'd like heard, by all means, send us an email with these comments. The more information you provide us, the more we can reflect upon the issues. The sooner you comment, the sooner we can bring them to light and work towards progress. Next slide, please. And on that note, I ask, what are your current methods of measuring food waste? And for this slide, I'm particularly interested in tracking and measuring food waste.
At this point in time, we would like to ask all large-scale generators to put your hands up first if you have comments, as you're one of the main focuses and one of the main groups that are impacted by this law. We'll have the first 1 or 2 minutes for large-scale generators to raise their hand to provide comment. And once we're done with that, or if we don't really receive too many, I'll ask that if anyone else who's attending would like to provide comment, please do so. First up, we have Brian Blair.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, great. So to talk about your question regarding how we measure food waste, I could tell you I'd like to just comment on how we measure food waste at our receiving facility. And that is a somewhat complex process, but what we do for compliance is look at the material when it comes in the door, and when that material arrives, it arrives with what we call an incoming material specification sheet, which is provided by actually the hauler And
Is
this
that a
sheet is
standard
used.
thing?
It's a standard thing. So the NJ regs require that you receive source separated food in our case, and there's regs that define what that means. And so we provide a sheet to answer to that reg and to try to keep quality managed on the front end, that the hauler provides us that says this is food waste, and here's we give them categories of food waste to check if it's coming from a manufacturer, if it's coming from a restaurant, or if it's bread or liquid residuals, like whatever category that food waste may have come from, they start with that. If it's unusual, if it's some kind of a residual food that is not easily identifiable, then we require them to provide an analysis of that food. Let's say that it's a food processor that produced something that looks kind of like soup and we can't be sure what it is. So we request an analysis of that prior to accepting the delivery. So prior to that truck being dispatched, we know that the ingredients of what's coming, and we know that that is suitable for the anaerobic digestion process. So we start with that. And then we move the material into our scale house, take the receipt. We usually have a bill of lading that tells us where it came from, and that's important because we want to give the counties that are recycling material credit for material that's leaving their county. That's important to the counties, and it's important that we get that source location so that they can get the credit. At the end of each year, we produce a report that goes out to the various counties that we can find. So make a note that not all of the counties, we don't have a list of all of the contacts of all of the counties. That's a little hole in the plan, but some of them are heads up are reaching out to us now and asking for that information. But we collect it, we report it in our annual report, and that's helpful for the recycling program numbers. So now we weigh the truck in. We do everything by weight. So we weigh the truck in, and then we weigh the truck out. And we use a certified scale to do that. But at the scale, we'll take a look at the material to make sure it looks like it should. Or source-separated organics tend to be kind of soupy looking, and they just have a particular look to them. So if there's nothing unusual about the way that the material looks, then we assume that it's exactly as described. And then we back the truck into our system and we dump the material into, we have receiving hoppers that receive that material and then sort it out. And it puts the residuals into a collection can, and it puts the organic fraction into the digester. So at the end of that process, we can look at the collection can and by volume see how much of that material was inorganic, and then we weigh that can, and we generally find that 10% by volume, once it's been processed, is like 20% by weight. It depends on what's coming in and what's going out, but without processing the material and putting it into a separate area first, you really can't measure it. You certainly can't measure what's in a truck or in a 30-yard container by looking at it. So we run it through the machine, get it separated, and then take a look at it, and then weigh it. And so through our various compliance audits, we provide quarterly and annually a list of what came in organics and then what went out as residuals. And by weight, we're generally 10%, let's say, of what came in went out as a residual by weight. And that's how we do it. And there's always confusion about volume of material. If you think about the water bottle, that maybe some of you have a water bottle sitting on your desk, and that water bottle may hold 16 fluid ounces of water, and it's holding a lot of air, right? But once you've processed that water bottle, you really have it reduced down to about 2 tablespoons PTE plastic. So by volume, it's really not that much, and so it's easy to, once you've processed through the separation equipment, it's easy to make that determination. So that's how we measure what comes in and what goes out. And sometimes we have more complicated loads that are actually packaged food, which would surprise you. They look like tractor trailers full of boxes of vegetables and fruits that look like they should be going to the grocery store, but they have some type of bacteria or something's happened that it can't be fed to people or animals. And in that case, it's a little more intimidating because you see these big boxes in the truck. But again, when you run that through the process, the cardboard in our process is emulsified and mostly goes through the digester. So you're left with the packaging, the bags, the straps, the things like that gets separated out in the process and then valued once you've processed them by volume or weight. And they also fall right within that 10% by well within the 10% by volume category, and by weight. What we do for our generators is we say if you're 15%, 20% by weight, you're going to be fine by meeting the volume standard, because once it gets processed and separated, you're going to see that you have a very low residual amount by volume. Was that helpful?
Very much so. From DEP staff, do we have any questions for Brian?
Thank you, Brian. At this point, I don't have a particular question, but just about what you just said, I'm just curious about your affiliation for the rest of our stakeholders so they know where you come from.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm with Trenton Biogas.
Perfect.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I should have mentioned that.
At this time, Brian, do you have any additional comments?
I'm more than happy to address specific questions that you have as you go through your list of questions.
Okay, great. Then we'll look forward to talking to you later on in this presentation. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Charles Malaniak. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
Yep, that's perfect. Thanks,
All right, sure.
So I guess before I comment, and listening to Brian's response, I was sitting there saying, boy, did I understand the question. But you were, I guess, just looking for the practices of, from our facility and, how we source separate and stuff like that. I mean, exactly where are you going with your question? What are your practices?
I'm going to toss that to Dana for response.
Yeah, I think we were just curious about how you measure your food waste. How do you know that you generate 52 or more tons per year? That you're subject to the requirements?
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. All right. So, yeah, but basically at our facilities, we source separate our food scraps, and we have certain bins that they go into. Our vendor will come. They'll take that that tote, that bin, whatever it happens to be. They'll weigh it for us, and then we get that information, back from them. Sometimes, depending which facility and which vendor we're using, it may go to their facility and they'll weigh it there. Other times they'll weigh it as they're picking it up when they're at our facility. Their truck has like a scale on it, so they'll weigh it there. And then on anywhere between a monthly and quarterly basis, we will get the weights for those individual locations, and then we upload it into our electronic data management system that we have, and that's how we'll track the the various different types of food waste that that are being generated from each of our facilities.
Charles, thank you so much for your input. Do we have any questions from DEP staff for Charles?
I do. Charles, I see that you're from Wakefern, so I'll just announce that for everyone.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's good. Just want to know, just want everybody to have an idea what everybody's background is or where they're coming from. But do most trucks have scales on them? I don't really.
I think it depends on on the vendor and the waste.
Okay.
Right. I think if it's used cooking oil, obviously they're not weighing it. They're just taking the liquid out, so that there's a mathematical conversion based on how many gallons that they've taken. Other vendors, they do have scales on their truck where they'll be able to weigh that. So it definitely is a vendor to vendor
Okay,
sort of specific thing.
thank you.
All right, Charles, do you have any further comments for us at this time?
Not on this question. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Next, we have Soledad Heron. I hope I pronounced that right.
So yes, I'm the project manager for Sodexo in the healthcare segment.
Good morning.
Good morning. A lot of our partners are hospitals, and what we have is a food waste prevention program called Waste Watch, powered by Lean Path, where a lot of our team members, whether they're frontline or culinary, if they're working in the retail space or if they're producing for the patient line, at the end of service, they will take those trays of leftover food or trim waste, or even when they're, you know, doing the inventory of the walk-ins or any of the pantry items, if there's expired foods, anything like that, before it gets put in any kind of receptacle or set for donation, it is put on a tracker and it is weighed, and all the particulars to that food item is plugged into the tracker. So whether if it was produced in the kitchen, or if it was produced for retail or patient, if it came out of an inventory circulation, whatever the case may be, what kind of receptacle it was in, who produced it, it gets weighed and tracked, and that's how we know where we are with all of the pre-consumer food waste at each of our facilities.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense. That's very
Yeah.
good.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Dana, do you have any feedback?
I don't have any comment except thank you, and I'm sure we'll be in touch with you throughout this entire process several times. So thanks, Soledad.
Thank
That
you.
was very informative. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Does anyone have additional comments on current practices for food waste? Seeing as we are not receiving any more volunteers for information, let's move on to the next slide.
Perfect. So right now, as of today, if you are handling your food waste by the methods you see on your screen and and you received authorization in writing, you are considered compliant. In other words, if you are sending your food waste to a Class C facility that has explicit approval by the department, you are compliant. Additionally, if the method that you are using falls into an exemption, like in-vessel composting and outdoor composting at farms, which is an exemption to the recycling rules, you are considered compliant as long as, again, you received authorization in writing. And finally, you're considered compliant under this RD&D approval. So, if I wasn't clear enough, you are considered compliant if the method you use to recycle your food waste has explicit approval or written authorization from New Jersey DEP. Next slide, please. In addition to allowing large food waste generators to send their wasted food for recycling as described in the previous slide, the food waste recycling law allows for large food waste generators to recycle their food waste by using an alternative authorized food waste recycling method. An alternative authorized food waste recycling method is defined by the law and means any of the following: recycling food waste at the site at which it is generated as authorized by NJDEP, treating food waste at the site at which it is generated pursuant to a permit issued by NJDEP, sending food waste off-site for use for agricultural purposes, including as animal feed, sending food waste off-site for treatment with sewage sludge in an anaerobic digester for renewable natural gas or biogas recovery as authorized by NJDEP, or any other method of recycling or reuse of food as authorized by NJDEP. Just to be clear, the law gives the department authority to authorize alternative food waste recycling methods. It does not give us authority to approve specific facilities, but rather to authorize the methods used by particular facilities. Next slide, please. In any event, we are curious about your current food waste recycling methods. Are you sending food waste out of state? If yes, please expand. Is it being recycled, used for agricultural purposes? We want to hear from you.
And we have a very astute request from one of our attendees today, from Chris Foote. It was stated, can folks that are speaking also mention what business they're working for or what category, such as a grocery or restaurant? Great point, because we'd like to know that too. Are there any large-scale generators? We'd like to have you guys be the first to answer and provide comment on this issue about recycling methods of your food waste. Do any of you use any different methods from what is already included in the law? Okay, Matt Carmel. Good morning.
Good morning. Matt Carmel. I'm a lawyer at Riker Danzig. Not a large generator, but given the silence, I thought you wouldn't mind. One thing that I wanted to address as an alternate food waste recycling method is reincorporation of food into the manufacturing process, either on-site or at another facility. And what I'm really getting at here is, upcycled food, food that is reincorporated back into the manufacture process, either to create a food for human consumption or as an ingredient that can be used in another process like makeup or some other consumer product good.
Do we know if there are many generators that actually employ those methods, at least in the state of New Jersey at this point?
Campbell's has a program, I know, not from any personal experience, just from news reporting. There also is a company called Matriarch Foods, which just received the DEP Sustainability Award for a project of that nature. And there are others, there are at least one or two others that are involved in that as well, and a national industry group that formed recently.
It's great information. Thank you for passing that along. Does anyone from DEP have any further comments on Matt's comment?
I'm curious, Matt, if the generator typically sends their food waste to one facility that then sends the food waste to a company like Matriarch, or do they typically have a contract with Matriarch and then that company would specify exactly what types of foods they may accept?
So it's going to depend a lot on the scenario. The Matriarch project that I was referencing involved an interim company, a food rescue nonprofit that was rescuing food from restaurants, manufacturers, those farms across the food infrastructure system, and delivered that to Matriarch. And that was the scenario because all of the food there was generated under grants and was donated to soup kitchens, etc. So there are many different models. I would assume that Campbell's, although I can't speak directly, doesn't transfer, in that scenario, and that in most cases it would go direct, and not through some kind of intermediary. But that's just my industry guess.
Interesting
Great,
stuff.
thank you.
Thanks so much. Matt, do you have anything further at this time?
I had a question about the about the authorization, it sounded like what was said is if a facility has a permit from DEP to recycle food waste, then it is automatically an alternative authorized food waste recycling method, but that there also might be other facilities that don't have DEP permits, and DEP's approach is possibly going to be, approving specific methods and not specific facilities. Like you might issue an approval for upcycled food, as we're discussing now, that meets certain criteria, but that you wouldn't issue a letter that said Matriarch Foods is an upcycled, is an approved alternate use.
I'd like to toss that question to staff.
That is correct, Matt. We will be authorizing methods, not facilities,
Okay.
in accordance with the law. So.
All right. Matt, thank you so much for your questions and your input. It's interesting stuff. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about recycling methods? Okay, we have Carol Tomolchowicz. Not sure if I got that right. Carol, please feel free to unmute yourself and tell us what you think.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
There you are.
You
Good
are.
morning.
Sorry about that. We have a gentleman going around to visit large quantity generators right now to make them aware of the law. And one situation that he's run into is that some of these potential large generators have, for lack of a better term, a large garbage disposal type system where they're grinding up their food waste and sending it right through the septic system, the sewer system, into, to one of the sewage treatment plants. So is DEP going to address whether that is allowable or not in the regulations? I guess my question is, are you going to have what's not allowed in the regulations, or a frequently asked questions list that will address that?
Hi, Carol. It's Seth Hackman. How you doing?
Good, good.
I just wanted to chime in. So I've heard of that before. Actually, a bunch of us visited a hospital last year that was using a similar method. And just batting it around on our end, we had some concerns about whether or not that is actually considered recycling or not, because technically what you're doing is, if I understand your process correctly, grinding food waste into something that can go into a sewer system as opposed to going to a landfill.
Right.
Right. So that's probably going to be something more like disposal as opposed to recycling. But it is something that we are aware of, and something that I don't want to say we'll address it in the rules, but it's something that we probably will provide guidance on, either in an FAQ or possibly through the rules.
Thank you.
Because we are aware that that is happening elsewhere in the state.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Seth.
Thanks, Carol. And I would also just add that I don't know that we can answer what we will and will not address in the rules, but this is, we're here engaging you all because Seth knew about this, I didn't know about this, so we're getting an education also, figuring out what we will or will not address in the rule.
And Matt Carmel has more questions.
I wanted to follow on Carol's point. Just everyone from DEP may already be aware of this, but New York's regulations on a similar law address this issue, the grinding and disposal to the sewer system, and have certain standards that may be interesting.
Thanks, Matt. We definitely are interested in harmonizing our law with what other states might be doing, our rules anyhow.
Thanks, Matt. Next up, we have Amy Crowell. Good morning, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well.
I work for a company called Denali Water Solutions, and we actually handle a lot of the liquid food waste in New Jersey.
Really?
What we do is we haul that material to farms, and we either use it on digesters or we actually land apply it for fertilizer. Does DEP have any plans to provide some of these large generators with maybe like a resource list of companies like ours that might be able to help them? What we found, especially in some of the smaller, while we call them smaller plants, for our volume, they are still producing waste, and they're not even familiar with companies like ours at all. So when we go to things like the New Jersey food processors, the meetings and things like that, a lot of the smaller plants they don't even know that there's a resource that could come in and help them. Is there going to be any type of outreach for them that could maybe hook them up with something, an organization like ours that would be a way for them to reuse the material instead of discharging it?
That's a great question.
Because we'd like to sign up if there is.
Me personally, I didn't know that there was that service available. That's pretty neat.
And see, to me, that's just a huge breakdown. And we really want to get the message out that there are other ways. And we have a large fleet of trucks, and we are actively land applying things such as milk waste and juice waste and things like that to fields. We also put down different vegetable wastes. And I noticed that in the DEP verbiage, it talks a lot about composting, but we really don't want direct land application to be looked over, because that material doesn't have to be composted to be beneficial. So.
Amy, what was the name of your company? We have some attendees that would like to know.
Sure, it's Denali Water Solutions.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything further to add? And then I guess I'll toss to either Dana or Seth for an extra response.
No, but if there's ever like an educational, like a day or things for food processors to come to maybe meet or talk about strategies, we'd love to participate as an interested body. So.
Awesome, sounds good.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Amy. I think that's an excellent idea. There's multiple processes going on right now with the department in terms of food waste. We also have a food waste reduction plan that is in draft format right now that we're trying to finalize. That's pursuant to a law that was passed in 2017. So some of what you're saying may apply more towards that, and we have short-term and long-term goals that we'll be implementing shortly towards that end, including possibly a food waste task force or food waste council that we're trying to implement through the state. But I do like your idea. I think we're certainly open to it, and we'll be happy to consider it. We'll certainly reach out.
Oh, and one last thing, I know it might seem a little counterintuitive, but just because of the industry that we're in, we do also work with plants on food waste reduction. We actually do go in and look at processes and find different ways to fine tune it, how we can either dewater material or different processes will actually reduce the amount of waste that's coming out. And we really do work with them to streamline things. So that is another part of the services that we offer. So that's something that we're very much environmentally minded, and that's another component that we do feel is important. So.
Great, thank you. Next, we have C. Helmlinger. Could you please tell us who you're affiliated with and provide your comment?
Yes, ma'am. With Helmlinger's Meadow Hill Farm, I actually had a question for Amy. My question was if she was acting in capacity with organics recycling, and if she was, if maybe she wanted to go in some detail on the livestock side of that business, and maybe just throw that out there for the farmers in the community and New Jersey.
Amy, we'd like you to come back. Amy? Are you still there? I don't know if we've lost Amy. Um, could you please put your comment in the chat so we can make sure that it's noted so that we'll reach out to her on your behalf? I'd appreciate that.
Sure, thank you.
Sure. Do you have any further questions or concerns? I'll take silence as a no. Charles Malaniak from Wakefern.
Yeah, hi. So a few things. The first is in reading the definition of the law, it doesn't look like they've covered used cooking oil in terms of under the alternative authorized food waste recycling method. So if I'm wrong, that's great. If I'm not, I think it definitely needs to be sort of dealt with there, because it's, that goes out to the market and is used for, biodiesel and stuff like that. So it's, just something you may want to take a closer look at. Maybe I'm missing it. I mean, it's not my industry, but, we do generate used cooking oil we do have a vendor who does use it, and it goes out to market and is sold. So, you may need to consider that as well. And then the other one is, meat bone fat rendering, and I guess that's sort of covered under any other method of recycling. Our meat bone and rendering program, they take that goes out to another vendor, and that is then processed into bone meal. Essentially. So, again, I think that's incorporated here, but I think that's where, us, the regulated community, we just don't want this to be made difficult for us. It needs to be something that, if there's, things and ideas out there, then, we should be able to go and do that. I'm concerned that we're going to get bogged down into some sort of request and authorization that we're going to have to submit, and how long is it going to take for us to get that? And I don't know. It just seems like it's like an administrative red tape disaster waiting to happen if we're going to kind of go down that road. I mean, quite frankly, it should just be left up to that vendor. I mean, that's if you're recycling it somewhere, then that's great. I mean, that's really the intent here. Is to really get it to the right type of facility, not to get bogged down in red tape. So.
Charles, thank you for your perspectives. Dana?
Yeah, no, it's not our intention to bog anybody down in red tape. Like I said, we definitely want this to be practical and as minimally burdensome as possible. I was just wondering, Charles, if you would be willing to share with us, you could send it to the email account, Reduce Food Waste, which you'll see at the end of the program, kind of a list of what your other recycling methods are, so that we
Okay.
can have kind of a more complete idea. Thank you.
Sure.
That's it, Judy.
All right. Charles, thank you so much. Next, we have Adam Bieder.
Hi, good morning. Adam Bieder with Hackensack Meridian Health. Our organization has, long before the food waste law in New Jersey was passed, we had undertaken strategies to reduce food waste in our hospitals, and particularly using the Sodexo method that Soledad mentioned earlier, and other similar strategies to reduce the use and generation of food waste on site. One of the major obstacles that we've encountered in a healthcare setting is the storage of food waste on site to then send out for recycling, composting, etc. I don't think it's any surprise that hospitals in general lack space in the exterior of many of our buildings for additional storage space outside, and other concerns about doing so in a healthcare setting. So we've really approached this from a reduction perspective. But some of our larger sites, I think, as was mentioned earlier, we have employed on-site biodigesters to help dispose of the unavoidable food waste on site. If that technology is not accepted under the DEP's eventual rules, we just wanted to bring up at this point that we really urge the DEP to, allow some options for on-site disposal or reduction that do not require us to store food waste in the hospital for periods of time. I know some other technology out there that has been employed is dehydration might be an alternative. So wanted to throw that on your agenda as well to look at. I think many hospitals have had success with on-site dehydration of unavoidable food waste. So that's it. Just wanted to make sure that issue is on your radar screen. I think, certainly in a healthcare setting, we have some unique challenges that other large food waste generators may not have.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your input.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have James Hayes. Okay, I don't know if James is having technical difficulties. James will keep you on the list with your hand raised. We're going to move on to Deborah Darby. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having this kind of webinar today. I'm Deborah Darby, Manager of Organics Sustainability Solutions with Tetra Tech. We are an engineering environmental consulting firm focused on solid waste. And as we're all here today, certainly organics management and processing, is part of the solid waste infrastructure that the state is looking to build out, and we can certainly assist both the public and private sector, not only at looking at materials through feasibility studies or market analysis, but also looking at helping to build out infrastructure and what might be the most successful path for entities to look at. So just wanted to make this introduction. We certainly work with a lot of clients in New Jersey and in other states throughout the Northeast, and can bring some perspective. So I just wanted to share this with you. I appreciate taking a few minutes with you.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Do we have any comments or responses from DEP staff? Deborah, could you please put in the chat function who you're affiliated with, just so we can make sure that we have that information too. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chris Foote.
Hi, folks. Chris Foote from Wegmans Food Markets.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for putting this together. This has been very informative so far. And I apologize. I did have to step away from the call just for a couple minutes. I have a question on one of the previous slides. It said that New Jersey DEP needs to grant written authorization for whatever type of disposal method we're using. Is there some type of a form that will go out that we can fill out, or how do we go about getting that authorization approved?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, we are working on developing a form that would allow large food waste generators to report multiple information, including the method that they're using, including the way that they measure their food waste, including any projections that they have for their food waste. Right now, unfortunately, everything goes through a process here at DEP, as you can imagine. So we're trying to get that approved, and then that would be available pretty much on a voluntary basis at this point until rules are written. I don't know if we can actually mandate that large food waste generators complete that form. But if you are looking to obtain any authorization for a method, that would be the form that you would use to submit. It's probably going to be in a fillable PDF format.
Okay, so nothing we need to be concerned with right at the moment, because we have been, prior to the law, diverting our food waste to Trenton Biogas.
Also, it's Scott Brubaker from DEP. Part of that may be related to the fact that if DEP does authorize a facility, a Class C facility, or a facility to process or recycle food waste, they will issue some type of authorization. And even if that activity that's being performed is deemed to be exempt from the solid waste or recycling rules, there will be an acknowledgement in writing from DEP for that exemption. So that should be taken broadly, that there is some kind of documentation that the activity is being either authorized specifically or approved as an exemption from the rules.
Right. So it's my understanding that written authorization sometimes from DEP can come in the form of an email. Not too complicated sometimes.
Yeah, Chris, did you mention, you said that you're currently diverting food waste to Trenton Renewable Power?
Yep.
Okay, so that is, that's compliance right now with the law. So I don't think that there'd be any reason why you need authorization from us to do what you're currently doing.
Great. Thank you for simplifying the process. Much appreciated.
I wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. So
yes.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks for your question.
This is Karen Clue, Bureau of Recycling and Hazardous Waste Management, and I just wanted to clarify that if an exempt facility notifies the department that they want to operate under one of the existing exemptions, the department does issue what we call an acknowledgement. So that would be the authorization that you would be looking for.
Thanks, Karen.
Chris, can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry,
Seth. Go on.
No, I just wanted to ask one question of Chris. Is that all your supermarkets that divert to Trenton Renewable Power, or is it some of them and not others?
It's all of New Jersey.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your information. Do any of you have additional questions? I don't see any other hands raised, but we'll give it a couple seconds. Up, Soledad Heron. Good morning again.
Good morning again. So I may have missed this, but is there a time frame given to those facilities that are above the 52-ton a year benchmark of when they need to fall into compliance with diverting or some other method or getting written approval for disposal or the biodigester, anything like that, to be in compliance?
We'll toss this to DEP staff.
Go ahead, Dana. You want to?
Well, I was just going to say that the requirements of the law kicked in October 14th. So large food waste generators should be in compliance at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say
good
so.
enough. Thank you.
If there's any, Soledad, if there's any concerns you have or questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can provide guidance. We could talk to you directly about, some of your options and things like that. But certainly reach out to us if you're concerned or have any questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments or questions on the food waste recycling method issue?
Yeah, I mean, I would just
Dana, you didn't raise your hand.
I'm sorry. Sorry. May I continue, Judy?
Sure.
Thanks. I would please request that if you have other ideas for other food waste recycling methods that we should consider, send them to us, contact us. We are here. This is, we need to know this information. Again, you're doing this stuff already. We are sitting at our desks. So please let us know what you know.
We actually have a comment or question from Michael Halliday. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but I gave it my best shot.
Oh, you nailed it. That was actually really good.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm Michael Halliday. I work for ESFM, which is a company that falls under Compass Group. Compass Group, among other things, they operate kitchens in a commercial environment. So for a variety of clients, many of them in the New Jersey area. So in the kitchen environment, There is a process for tracking food scraps, expired food, things like that, that does go out, and that's tracked pretty thoroughly. Kind of similar to, I think, what Soledad was talking about as well. So what we found, so I have two questions. What we found is that actually using pre-COVID rates, we actually don't have any facilities right now that we support clients for that we're generating above 52 tons a year, but we do track that actively. So one of my questions was, is it likely that in the future, maybe a year or a few down the road, that the 52 tons per year threshold will be reduced to kind of encapsulate more facilities that are generating food scraps? So that's question one. And then the other was, for all of this data that we do have, would we be able to report that on our clients' behalf, or would you be looking for us to advise our clients of what we do track and those thresholds, and then you would really want to receive that information from them?
So I think the reporting requirements we're going to talk about next, but
Okay.
but giving thought to a third-party organization like you is something that we would consider incorporating as appropriate, in the rule, if that's possible, allowing for you to report on your client's behalf. As far as changing the law to reduce the threshold to less than 52 tons per year, I don't know. I don't know what the legislature is planning. The current law does include a food waste reduction section in it. We also have the food waste reduction plan. I mean, that is our ultimate hope, that that we reduce the amount of food waste that's generated. I don't know what the legislature is going to do with reducing the threshold.
Dana, I think Sonia has her hand raised. I think she can probably provide additional information on this point. And Dana, one more thing. An attendee had asked that you share your contact information and email in the chat. So, okay. Sonia, thank you for raising your hand.
Thanks, Judy. You're welcome. Dana, I think you were right in terms of the threshold volume number. Being that it's given in the law, we have no way of knowing when or if that will change at this point. But the third party, like providing of information, typically I would think it would be, and this will all be ironed out once the rule is adopted, but in circumstances like that, I think you would still need the generator's sign off as well to accompany that. So either the generator include an acknowledgement with your submittal, or your submittal goes through the generator to the department. Just kind of contemplating how that would work, but you would need acknowledgement that they're aware of what you're reporting, so the liability aspect is covered.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael, do you have any further questions or comments?
Not right now, thanks.
All right, thank you. And Soledad, you still have your hand up. Do you have any further comments or questions?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's an error.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you. Everything's been answered. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll put out a last call for any comments or questions about the food waste recycling methods before we move on to our next point. Okay, we're not receiving any additional hands, so I'm going to toss back to Dana for the next stage of the presentation.
All right, next slide, please. So I heard a couple of stakeholders talking about data management systems and lean path, and for this one, we really just want to talk about what, if any, are your current record keeping practices. We want to know how we can develop and adopt a protocol that matches your current system.
In other words, are there any general industry forms or formats that you already use? Because if there's something that you already use that would provide the information that we're looking for under the law, then it would be great if we would be able to incorporate that, because it makes it easier for everybody. Again, as with our last questions, we'd like to ask any large-scale generators to put their hands up first. So let's give you guys the first couple seconds to raise your hands. If there are none specific, oh, we have Mike Halliday. Thanks, Mike.
Sure. Back again. Just speaking for that cafeteria operations process, it's measured in quarts. The containers that they use, it's like a 5 or a 6 type container. So they fill it to the top, and then they just take note of how many of those they fill up in a day. That can be converted into like a pounds kind of a measurement for the tracking. Just use like some industry like weight conversions.
All right, thanks, Mike. I'm sorry, Michael. Do we have any further comments or questions on this topic? It's all about record keeping and paperwork and all that fun stuff. Okay, Dana, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
So I think for this one, it might be easier for some stakeholders or large food waste generators to send this information via email. Like if you have a spreadsheet or a database that you can either screenshot or send us the type of information that you do keep records of, that would be really useful for us to use as we develop these rules. So that's my request, is just send us a picture of what it is that you collect and how you collect it.
Sounds good. And Julia Garcia?
I just thought I'd make the comment, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but earlier commenter mentioned an annual report that is sent to counties that includes the food waste that is sent to their facility and the amount. I'm curious if a similar report is provided to other clients, like private businesses, and or receipts or reports, whatever format it may be. If anyone wants to comment on that.
All right, great question, Julia. We actually have a hand raised from Charles Malaniak from Wakefern.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of respond to the data management aspect. I mean, we keep it real simple. I mean, it's just the date that it was picked up, the waste type and the weight. I mean, I'm not sure you need anything more than that, to be honest with you. And that goes for all of our vendors. If it's a vendor that takes a liquid, we ask them to convert it into pounds, and we go from there. So we like to keep it all standard and just do it all in pounds. It just makes it that much easier for our system. That's it.
Thank you much, Charles. Next, we have Carol Tomaszewicz.
You can just say Carol T. It's fine.
Okay, Carol T. Thank you for raising your hand again.
I wanted to bring in the whole aspect of the municipal recycling tonnage grant to this process, and just point out a few current issues that we have. One of which is either getting reports from two different places for the same weight, for the same material, or not getting a report at all. So I do want to point out that any recycling facility is not only supposed to be sending a report to the counties, but needs to send it to the towns, unless the county is going to provide that to the towns, because the towns are the ones who have to fill out the tonnage report. And also point out an issue where if a business is going to report the recycling of the food waste to the town, and then the town is also going to get a report from the facility, we run into issues where the numbers don't match often. And this may be people using different conversion factors, or the waste, when it gets to the recycling facility, it's attributed to the wrong town or the wrong location. So I'm looking for a simpler process, and I don't know what that is, but I don't like when two different people are reporting for the same material. I'd rather have the generator, if a ShopRite Wakefern is using Trenton Biogas, I'd rather see them just report that they're using Trenton Biogas and have Trenton send the report to the towns instead of getting the same data from two people.
All right, Carol, thank you. Any DEP staff, would you like to respond?
No, I appreciate that. It's something that I think possibly somebody had to step off who could probably better answer this or respond to this, but I'll bring it up with my chain of command and have this conversation. It's frustrating. I get it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Do you have anything further?
Nope.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to move on to Brian Blair.
Thank you. So Brian Blair from Trenton Renewables at the Trenton Biogas facility. So I wanted to comment on the reporting. There are a couple gaps that need to be filled regarding reporting because we don't have a database with contact phone numbers and emails for all of the towns, nor do we have specific details from the generator locations. We have general, and let me explain why. So if you're a generator and you do not want to accumulate a lot of organics outside of your building, you may be using toters, and so the haulers may be picking up, if you think about efficiencies, the haulers may be traveling with a single truck to your facility to pick up 2 or 3 toters, and then moving to the next facility to pick up 2 or 3 toters, and they may or may not be full. So toter being kind of like a trash can, and then those are all commingled into that truck, so that the truck can grab maybe 17 or 20 stores in a night, and then they arrive. So the numbers aren't precise by the store. They really can't be unless the store is generating a precise count of the toters outside. So when it arrives at our facility, it is as far as which percentage came from which store, it can't be exact because it's all commingled in the truck. So we have the total weight of say 17 stores, but that's a gap that I don't think has been fixed as far as exact numbers. I would guess that has to come from the store to get it exact, and that may create discrepancy between one store's report and another's. I'm not sure how to fix that. We just have the total cumulative number at our facility and in our report. So the 2 points are: one, we need as the service outlet a directory to go to send reports to the various towns if they need to go to the towns, and because we don't have that, it doesn't exist. And then I think there needs to be maybe another group kind of a session to figure out how to analyze these totes that are coming out of the small stores, and how to kind of pin down with more precision reporting for that.
Thanks, Brian. I think we can address getting you the contact information for the towns. You could contact us and we can offer that list for you. As far, this is the start of the next discussion point, actually, is the obstacles and challenges. I think
Man, our attendees are on the ball.
Yeah, I feel like in an ideal world, every truck would have a scale and every stop would be weighed, but that's obviously not reality.
All right, we got to work with what we got.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comment. Next up is Wayne DeFeo. Morning, Wayne.
Good morning. How is everybody today?
As well as can be expected.
Yeah. Just going to the comment of reporting that Carol raised and that was raised again, this is no different than what we deal with in recycling reporting generally. Right now, if a company goes to pick up a 6-yard container or a 4-yard container at a commercial location, they're reporting based on a national or set average. And that's the way I think you're going to have to find it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. What is important is that the conversion factors be consistent across the board. So on the tonnage grant, we have a conversion factor that's required and that we have to use as a county or a municipality. Either that conversion factor is incorrect and food waste is on that list and needs to be modified, or it is correct and we say, okay, this is the official conversion factor. What works now, and I agree that it's not perfect, but just so you're not reinventing this wheel. So unless Dana's goal is met, i.e. every truck has a scale to weigh every container, which is going to be difficult, then The alternative is the same way we do it with any kind of front load or rear load can for recycling. It's a can containing single stream. It has this compaction rate. It has this rate of density. You assume it to be full for reporting purposes. There is no other way to do that, is my point. So I recognize that's not the most accurate method, but you have a system in place, and it's got to be the same for both the food waste reporting and the recycling tonnage grant reporting, or we're going to have a complete disaster. That's it.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Chris Foote.
Hello again. I just wanted to kind of add on to what Brian from Trenton Biogas was saying about measurement of the food waste, and he's exactly right. I mean, you know, that truck is going to be going around to multiple locations, multiple customers, commingling everything in. So there's just no way that you can break that back down into, you know, if you've got 100 pounds, you know, 10 tons in the truck, where did all that 10 tons come from? So the way we track and measure at each individual store location is, as Brian mentioned, we are one of those companies that is using the toter or the can method. So the food scraps and materials are filled right in the departments in the stores. When the bin is full, it comes to our back dock. It's staged and prepared for pickup. We've done numerous calculation studies, weighing of individual bins to get an average weight. So when the hauler comes and picks up, they record how many bins they picked up. So, and what they'll do is, and then we calculate that number of bins back into a total estimated approximate weight. That's how we track it. And yeah, it would be impossible for the end destination to, you know, say, you know, what they picked up at the Montvale store location. So we track that on our own based on what the hauler tells us how many bins they picked up per service. And to get a scale on a truck, I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I think you're going to get a lot of pushback from the haulers. And also the truck that comes to our stores, it picks up 3 bins at a time. So it's not just doing 1 bin at a time. So you'd have to get a weight of 3 bins per lift on it. So I just hope that's helpful. Thanks.
No, yeah, that is helpful. Thanks.
Very much so. Thank you very much, Chris. Next commenter we have is Heather Farkas. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Thank you for having me and sharing this information. I work for Morrison Healthcare, and we are the food service vendor for hospitals across the country. Our food waste tracking tool is called WasteNot, and much like Soledad was explaining with Sodexo's waste tracking tool, we are able to use our WasteNot program to collect information about avoidable and unavoidable food waste that each of our hospitals are creating.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jay Sims from Monmouth County. Good morning, Jay.
Up, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just curious, as another form of stakeholders, is there any thought been given to reach out to the different chambers? For instance, I live in Freehold. The restaurant industry is pretty heavy in my town, and just as another outlet for them to know that this law is circulating and what options they have regarding their food waste, because I've been asked that already locally here in my town.
Yeah, we are developing an entire outreach and promotion campaign, so we intend to get the word out as soon as possible. I mean, many of the large food waste generators, and possibly those who were not large food waste generators, should have received a couple of letters from us as well. And we have a web page that in the meantime you can direct some of these stakeholders to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, while we're waiting for any additional raised hands, I'd like to note that in the chat, Carol T. had noted that the county recycling coordinators had asked Erin Jensen of DEP whether the DEP could host an online report system where facilities could upload their data and municipal coordinators could access it all instead of a facility having to send it out to many towns. Carol, thank you for your idea. I don't know if there are any DEP staff that would like to provide a response to that at this point?
I don't think those who are here can provide the response to that, but we will bring that up.
We'll definitely take it under advisement. Thank you so much, Carol. Jay Sims from Monmouth County.
He might not have put his hand down.
No, I didn't put my hand down. I'm bad. I'm sorry.
You're not bad.
Well, I didn't know if you had an additional thought that you wanted to toss in. So
nope, not at all.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any more comments, questions regarding the records for food waste? We have a question from George Tyler. Good morning, George.
Good morning. Did I unmute myself? Yes. Okay.
Yes, you're good.
I just thought you might want to consider revamping the system slightly so the generators report the waste they generate, similar to other areas of solid waste and hazardous waste, and not get these centralized facilities reporting back to the county, reporting to DEP what they get from each county. It's kind of difficult to keep that straight. And I agree with the comments I heard earlier that that's going to add a lot of confusion and double counting to the system, where the generators have kind of a smaller amount to deal with, and DEP does get reports from generators, at least certainly in the solid waste, the hazardous waste area. That's my thought.
Thank you, George. I was actually pondering the same thing. I was looking at the law as everybody was talking to see who actually, the law gives us the authority, I think right now, over the large food waste generator, but don't hold me to that. And then I looked at their reporting requirements and it wasn't clarified here who those are directed towards. So I was also contemplating the generator as the one that was reporting.
Yeah, the
Thank you for that comment.
I'll object now, but
no, totally. This is it. This is part of the conversation. We need to have it.
And I think DEP is certainly allowed under the law to make reasonable extractions from the statute and its regulations. So
sure. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have Lauren Lastimosa. Good morning, Lauren. Oop. Lauren put her hand down. Are you there?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. Good morning.
Great. Good morning. Hi, and thanks for having me. I'm from Unwaste. I run a microhauling business along mostly the central Jersey shore right now, but we're looking to take on commercial clients and do microhauling as opposed to hauling. So customers that are generating between about 1 to 2 tons per week. And we do use the toter method, so we are actually able to weigh each toter individually from our generators. So since it is a microhauling, it is a little bit easier for us to weigh the toters than, the actual large-scale haulers that I think one of the gentlemen had said he can only weigh 3 toters. I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but and I know we're one of the minorities in the hauling kind of group here. So I just wanted to, put that out there that we are one of the companies that are able to weigh from the generators, although on a small scale. And
great. Thank you very much for that information. Dana, are we good?
We are
I didn't
good.
know. I
Nope.
didn't know if you had anything else to note for.
No, I'm just glad to receive the information. Thank you, Lauren.
Next up, we have Megan Durrell. Oop, just in case, I'm sorry, Megan. I saw that Sonia of our staff raised her hand. Sonia, I didn't know if you have a response to the prior commenter.
When did you become a year older? No, not a response. Just a question. If Lauren wouldn't mind clarifying the difference or the criteria for micro hauling versus otherwise. I'd just like a little more elaboration if you can.
Okay, let's toss back to Lauren for a second.
Hi, Sonia. I'm not sure of the official distinction between microhauling, but we do drive around a box truck, so rather than something that tips. So we're taking in the tippers by hand into our trucks and doing a switch out method. And I mean, generally what we have had experience with is between 1 and 3 tons per week. So that's about all the information that I have as far as microhauling goes for, just from what we've done. And if anybody else has info on that is more official than
That's helpful. That's I just kind of get a better picture in my mind. So box trucks as opposed to tipping trucks. That's great. And thank you, Judy. And sorry to cut the other person off.
Lauren, Sonia, thank you. Megan Durrell, sorry about the little delay there.
No problem. Good morning. Megan Durrell. I'm with Albertsons Companies. And I just wanted to address the generator reporting status. So we currently do food waste diversion in all of our stores, but we do not have any way to weigh that material. At best, we would be eyeballing the volume and doing a conversion on that. But at this point, we have excellent vendors in place, and they provide all of that information to us. They either track it by store and provide us with those weights, or they weigh the containers at the time of pickup. So we're in a good position, but it would be really strenuous on our stores to expect us to convert that food waste into weight and report it for, at our source at the point of generation.
I appreciate that comment, Megan. I'm curious also if you would just be able to provide us with whatever, if you would voluntarily submit some information that your vendors give to you so we can kind of have a look at it and become more familiar with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I can do that.
Thanks much, Megan. Gary Sondermeyer. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Very well, Judith. Thank you very much. And just a very quick comment, if I could, please, generally directed to Dana. Hello, Dana. We, through the New Jersey Climate Change Alliance, we convened an organics work group and put together an organics plan for the state that we're working through. And as part of that, we just stood up an education committee. And Dana had mentioned the outreach campaign. And just wanted to throw out that we are available to assist in any way that it would be helpful to the department. We've certainly made a tremendous amount of contacts in the generator community, really the whole sphere of organics. And part of what we want to do through our education group is work with the department to help you in that mission, to get the word out, to do sector-based education tools, one-page fact sheets, all that kind of stuff. So offline, I'll reach out to you, Dana, about our group. And Emily DeMeo is participating with us. And we just started on Tuesday. So perfect timing. Thank you.
Yeah, that is perfect. Thanks, Gary. I'll look for your email.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Dana. Next, we have Ariel Bernard. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Ariel Bernard. I'm with Waste Management's core facility. Just two things I wanted to piggyback off of Lauren and Sonia's questions regarding micro haulers. We receive food waste material from a few other micro haulers in the area. So I know just from the ways that they're picking up material, it could be as small as 5-gallon buckets that they're either swapping or just lining and then relining and putting the material into the bed of their truck. So Lauren mentioned using a box truck, but I know that there's other micro haulers that are also just using pickup trucks with maybe like a sled or like a tipper on the back of their truck, and that comes directly to our facility, and then they're able to just tip the material onto our tipping floor. So that's to go with the micro hauler question. And then, yeah, as far as records go, we also do mostly estimates because, again, when the material comes to our facility, unless it's specifically one pickup from one customer that has a lot of food waste, we typically use estimates and then provide our customers with sustainability reports. So basically tracking with estimates, tracking the volume that they're diverting for food waste and what the footprint benefits are for the customer and like the greenhouse gas emissions. So that's all. Thank you.
That's great info. Thank you so much. Dana, did you have a response?
No, I agree. It's great information. Thanks.
Because I saw you sitting out of the corner of my eye. Do we have any additional questions or comments on this topic? I don't see any more hands raised, so I think we should move on to the next slide.
Right. So we did begin this conversation already. I'm just curious if anybody has other comments they would like to add to the conversation about current and potential challenges of food waste reduction and recycling.
So basically right now it's an open floor. We'd like to know what you think about food waste, anything else that we've talked about today, if there's any issues that you think we need to discuss in the future. Right now we have Wayne DeFeo. Hi again, Wayne.
Hello again. The biggest comment I would have regarding challenges and obstacles to recycling. Reducing, we have a lot of laws on the books. We have donation protection law already, so you can donate food. But the biggest challenge and obstacle to reducing and recycling food waste will be the DEP. Right now, the regulatory structure for permitting facilities, we're not talking about the exempt and exclusions we talked about last week, although that is a problem, but the general permitting structure is such that it will raise the cost, potentially, of permitting a new facility, especially composting now, to a point where the cost per ton will be greater than the cost per ton of disposal, which, as you know, is the cutoff threshold for requiring a generator to recycle the food waste. DEP needs to coordinate its permitting processes because different divisions within the department simply don't play well together, and they are causing massive difficulty in the permitting process. That's one. The second will be the ability of a local municipal government to veto outright an application for a food waste composter for no reason. County planning, theoretically, preempts the locals. That was done for a reason back in the 80s. But no county, from a practical matter, will process an application for a facility in its solid waste management plan if the local community objects at all. I'm not talking about EJ communities at all here. That's not my point. And DEP needs to work on that. You have issued letters in the past about this, but if a local mayor can simply say, I don't want it, no reason, no basis, I just don't want it, I won't support it, and the county says if they won't support it, we won't process your application, how will these ever be cited? That's it.
Thanks, Wayne. Next is Isaac Berg from NJCC. Morning, Isaac.
Good morning. So, yeah, I just want to strongly, second Wayne's comments there. Those are very much appreciated and supported.
I think you might have to third it because over in the chat, Matt Carmel strongly seconded. So
there we go. So yeah, we're all in agreement on that. But Yeah, if I didn't mention, with the New Jersey Composting Council, one of the things that is often a challenge and we get questions on is sort of how do you establish a program? And so what I mean by that is the entire process around source separating and what are the right bins, where should they be placed, how do we connect with the hauler, and what does the whole process look like? And so I just wanted to say that it would be great to see DEP putting together resources to help the generators along that path. I know, we can certainly help with that as the New Jersey Composting Council. I just saw Corey from the Center for Eco Technologies raising her hands, and they're great at that as well. But I think that's going to be, something that can be very important, especially for some of the smaller generators. The Wakeferns of the world might have some very sophisticated systems and programs in place, and so we're always happy to help them. But I think they kind of know what they're doing. But some of the smaller folks might really need some assistance in that regard. So.
All right, good points. Thank you. Thank you very much, Isaac. Next up, as if I don't know how you guys time this, but we have Charles Malaniak from Wakefern. Charles, what are your additional comments on these points?
So what I want to focus on here is really the challenges and obstacles of reducing food waste. I personally, I think we're setting a bad precedent in the state at the moment because we're focusing on recycling of food waste, because it's going to commercialize it and it's going to make it the choice of people, of facilities, because it's going to be the easy thing to do. We really need to focus on educating the public, because most of the food waste, whether you're in a restaurant or a grocery store, most of that food waste that's generated there is as a result of the consumer. The consumer is the number one food waste generator in our state and the country. They are picky shoppers. A bruised apple, one tiny little bruise, nobody's going to select that. They're not going to put it into their basket. And we're all shoppers. We've all done it. So the same thing with food in the restaurant. We order too much food, right? And then that food just gets thrown away. So really, recycling of food waste is just a Band-Aid. The DEP needs to focus on, and this is a generational change. This isn't going to happen overnight. The DEP needs to focus on educating the consumer, starting with kids in school, with responsible shopping, with responsible food ordering, because without that, all we're going to do is generate more waste and be building more waste facilities. And that's a shame, because the food is not meant to be a food waste. It's meant to be consumed. And then we're going to be growing more food and spending more resources on that front end. So if we're not doing a better job of educating the consumers who are really the food waste generators out there, then this is just going to be spiraling out of control. And then my other note here is really in between the reducing and the food waste, and that's the food banks. The DEP needs, we're setting up this commercialization for a food waste recycling industry. Why aren't we doing that for the food banks? Grocery stores and manufacturers, distributors and restaurants, all this excess food, the food banks can't handle it. The food banks don't have the infrastructure. They don't have a million square foot refrigerated facilities, to handle the amount of food that's coming, from these various industries. If we did, we would be better off. That's for sure. We could feed a lot of people. But that's why there's so much food waste. There's so much food waste because of the lack of education at the consumer level, And also because of the lack of investment into the food bank's infrastructure, both not only from a warehousing standpoint, but also from a distribution and transportation standpoint. You know, if you're not going to do those first two, then yeah, all we're going to be doing is building recycling facilities and using our food for energy, and that's just, you know, that's just a bad precedent. So my appeal to the DEP is to get involved and get programs in place to educate the consumers and to also start investing in the food bank, because that's where you'll have the greatest impact long term. Thank you.
Charles, thank you for your insight.
Yeah, thank you for that. Seth mentioned earlier that we currently have a draft food reduction plan, and I think this consumer component and education is addressed there. We're also, I mean, today talking about the food waste recycling law, which became effective while I've been here, but there was the food waste reduction law, which went into effect, I think, in 2017. So we are also, at the same time, we're working with our communications folks to provide outreach and education on recycling. We are also developing reduction outreach and education. I think also ultimately when the governor's office appoints councils for both the reduction law and the recycling law, some of these obstacles can be addressed. And I see that Gary has his hand up, and I suspect Gary's going to speak a little bit more on this, so I will stop and I will mute myself.
All right. Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Charles. Yes, Gary is our next person in line for comment. Hi again, Gary. How are you?
Hello. Thank you very much, Judith, and thank you, Dana. And what I would say is that we put together through the Climate Alliance a stakeholder process to try to answer this exact question. We did a statewide gap analysis related to holistically all the different aspects of organics management to look at challenges and obstacles and what we can do. And we did come up with 17 core initial opportunities for action to answer your question, Judith. And obviously, I'm not going to go through that today in any way. But I would just comment on a few areas. And I think Charles was extremely eloquent in what he had just said. And also, I agree with Wayne on the regulatory side. There's some things we need to do. But let me just mention a few very quickly. First, there's never really been in New Jersey any form of central governance in the whole realm of food donation and rescue. And I'm extremely encouraged because in the last legislative session, we had the creation of a new Office of Food Insecurity Advocate. That'll be in but not of the Department of Treasury and New Jersey EDA. And I think that's going to be a critically important step in unifying the organics community, because one of our key observations is all the folks that are, many of the folks on this call aren't necessarily the folks that are involved in donation. And Charles hit on that, the food banks, the pantries, the kitchens, the table-to-table transportation network. We need to bring that whole community together. So central governance is a first point. A second finding that we made on the donation end, and Charles again hit it on the head, is really infrastructure. There's woefully inadequate transportation infrastructure with the food donation world, and between the banks and the pantries and kitchens, and even basic equipment. You know, a lot of the entities that are providing these services don't have refrigerators. I mean, really basic stuff, and food banks often don't have forklifts. They don't have refrigerated box trucks. They don't have lifts on the backs of the trucks to be able to go into urban areas and pick up pallets of food. So second area is transportation and equipment and other infrastructure. A third is technology. And I'll give a great analogy. I think the state, the department did a tremendous thing in purchasing Recycle Coach and making that available to all of the towns in the state. There are similar technology apps like 412 Food Rescue that can be a real-time way to connect donors with users. So that at the end of a day, if a restaurant has excess meals and that they can donate, it's a live app system that people can connect with on the receiving end and to distribute that food. So I think technology is another one. And the final one I'll mention, because I'm blabbing too much here, is what Charles had said: education, 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 education. We really need to do a much, much better job to dispel misconceptions, date labels. Senator Smith, I was on a program with him last week, and he said one of his big priorities for the next session is going to be a date label piece of legislation, so that we have sort of a truth in advertising with date labels. So I'll stop there. I'll certainly make sure everybody at the department has our plan and what we would like to pursue, in working directly in concert and cooperatively with the department and the counties, the towns, and the entire state. Thank you very much, Judith.
Thanks, Gary. Our next speaker is Corianne Menzel. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Of course, thank you, DEP, for hosting this meeting today. I've been taking in all of these comments, and I wanted to respond to a few. So I'm with the Center for Ecotechnology, which is a nonprofit of over 40 years that helps businesses and institutions identify and implement solutions across the EPA food recovery hierarchy, so looking at prevention, donation, then also diversion to animal feed, composting, and anaerobic digestion. And so we help businesses and institutions navigate these challenges and identify what solutions are right for them and what are those additional resources and components that are really going to stand up those programs for a long time. So I think about sustainability from a multifaceted approach, where you're thinking about it, of course, from an environmental perspective, but also what's feasible for your operations and for your finances as well. And I know earlier there were some comments around, the consumer, and although our focus is on the business and institution, we have also developed a variety of signage and guidance documents that can help the business translate what they're doing to those front of house, if you will, consumer-facing materials, so that you're sharing that message and hopefully helping them bring it home as well. So for instance, we have signage that goes around of course, institution, so university, dining hall, as well as a retail grocery store where you can be talking to the consumer about what you're doing. And then also understanding that there have been a variety of service providers that have talked about, their hauling services, their composting operations, food rescue organizations, and we're also having conversations with all of those providers to ensure that we're making those proper matches and really listening to what their interests are, because I think noted earlier, we want to make sure that food rescue organizations specifically are receiving material that they can accept and not just going to not be able to handle or distribute to feed the hungry people. Thanks again, and I'm happy to put my contact information in the chat because fortunately we do have support from EPA and USDA and others to offer our assistance at no cost to entities in New Jersey at this time. So, thanks.
Really good stuff. Thank you very much, Corianne. Our next speaker is George Tyler.
Thank you. First, I should have said this earlier. I want to add my compliments to DEP for putting this program like this together and getting so many wise people collectively. I'm not talking about myself here. Together to share some insights on this. I think that it's a great way to proceed and keep it up. I actually raised my hand when Wayne was speaking, but I don't want anything that I say that follows to contradict what Charles and Gary said about education. Totally agree with that. But I would just offer that that's a long-term solution, and I think we need to put it in place. And in the meantime, we are going to need to recycle, and we are going to need facilities to do that recycling, and hence my comments on the regulatory side. I think the department needs to really focus on minor permitting issues that come up with desired facilities. I represent Trenton Renewable Power, to be candid, and it was a great step forward, I believe, for the state to have a facility like that that can take up to 450 tons a day and turn it into renewable natural gas, which is a tremendous benefit to the environment from a climate perspective, for sure. Yet, not a complaint. I think the department's bound by its laws and regulations, so it's very difficult to cut a desired facility a break on an air pollution issue that's really not that important, or a wetlands issue that's really not that critical. But I think you need to take a look at that. One of the suggestions that some of the people who've been working on one of the councils have talked about is having an advocate for recycling facilities in the Office of Permit Coordination or somewhere reporting to the commissioner to at least cut through these issues so that they don't cost the applicants tons of money to fix when they're legitimately not mission critical to the department. I'll give an example, and somebody might argue with me, maybe it is, but we had disturbed wetlands near a road covered with stones, and it actually, it was a problem that had to be solved from the regulatory perspective, but it cost thousands of dollars in consulting and legal fees to get it done. And it added a burden to a facility that every senior person at the department who came to visit it said, we need this facility. So I just say focus on that somehow, and it may take a change in law. Maybe Senator Smith will have to put something in to allow that kind of waiver. But I would just urge the department to keep an eye on that with desired facilities, not just food recycling, across the board. When you have something that's good for the environment, there ought to be a way to cut through the red tape, so to speak. Thanks.
George, thanks so much. Next up, we have, let's see, I lost my lineup. Lawrence Federico. Lawrence, are you there? I guess Lawrence is no longer there. We'll move on to Chris Foote. Hi again, Chris.
Hello again. I just want to say I'm glad that the topic of food donations has come up in the conversation. I'll speak from our perspective at Wegmans. When we look at the problem of food waste, we try to follow the EPA food waste reduction hierarchy. And first and foremost, we're trying to reduce source reduction, right? Better, more efficient orders, just not over ordering, not having stuff back in the coolers that's going to go outdated before we can sell it. But probably the biggest piece that we are focused on is food donations. And, we're talking about food here. So food has a purpose. It's not to be thrown out. It's not to be composted. It's not to go to a digester, but to actually feed people. So what have been engaged in and trying to do is really max out donations to the fullest extent possible. I think it was Charles that mentioned, that apple with a bruise on it. In a way, that's a good thing because we're not going to throw that apple out. That is going to feed someone. That's going to be donated to somebody. And so I guess what I would do, especially with all the food retailer folks that are on the call, and they're probably, many of them are already doing this, but that should be really the primary focus, is on donations and maxing out donations first and foremost. There's plenty of material left after that. We do a lot of production on our stores where we're going to have rinds and peels and trimmings. All that kind of stuff can go into the bins. We're going to have, unfortunately, product that does go past that best by, use by, sell by date. That can go into the bin if it's no longer donatable. But also, to Charles's point, the food banks, where we're restricted in some ways is we have more food to give than there are agencies to take it. So, and that varies from store to store. And unfortunately, COVID has only exacerbated that issue. When we were first hit with this, last year, we had a lot of agencies, organizations that were coming to the store to pick up that stopped out of fear of coronavirus. Many of these organizations, I refer to them kind of as the Ma and Pa food pantry. They're run by volunteers. Oftentimes it's retired folks, so they have, you know, elevated health concerns, so they stop coming. And so the other piece I'm concerned about too is I don't know exactly how the compliance piece of the law is going to work. I don't know what, and maybe you guys were getting to that in the presentation. But we have stores that donate over 20,000 pounds of food a month, and we have stores that are under 5. So when a regulator comes in and kind of sees that disparity, you know, why is this store able to donate so much and this one's not? Well, it's because of the infrastructure around food donations. It's because, you know, it's just not there. As much as we would like as many agencies to come to the store, they're limited. And so I think, you know, back to Charles's point, that's where the food banks could use some help. We want to give as much food out as we can, but we're limited in some cases because of the lack of agencies that are able to come to the store and pick it up. Last thing I'll say is the way that we try to bridge that gap or fix that is we reach out to the regional food bank. So for example, if our store or our stores is in the region of where the Community Food Bank of New Jersey operates, we reach out to them for help. And we say, hey, look, you know, we've got a store. We only have 2 agencies that are coming, and they're only coming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'd like to fill those gap days. We'd also like to bring in an agency that can take refrigerated donations, right? We kind of safeguard those a little bit closer for obvious reasons, food safety reasons. So we vet any organization that comes in that's going to pick up refrigerated donations. There's a series of questions we ask them. The food banks help us with that. And, you know, I think that's where the focus should be first and foremost. There's going to be plenty of material going off to Trenton Energy and the composters after that, but we should really max out donations. And I think that the food banks and some of these other smaller regional food pantries could use some assistance to bolster their ability to collect from us. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Chris. And it seems like it's the appropriate time of year to really be thinking about that too. Next up, we have Sandra Holland from New Jersey Department of Agriculture. Hi, Sandra. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Good morning. I wanted to mention that as we look at the EPA food recovery hierarchy and consider food waste for livestock feed, we need to acknowledge that the material for that use has additional quality control concerns. Food waste for livestock feed must continue to be handled as food until it's delivered to a farm for feed or to the feed manufacturer. Additional guidelines on this are within the Association of American Feed Control Officials definition of recovered retail food, which is referred to within our New Jersey commercial feed law. The Department of Agriculture would love to understand how hauling companies are complying with that, or if that is how achievable of a goal that is, continuing to maintain that material as a food.
Good points and good perspective. Thank you, Sandra. Next up, we have Charles Malaniak from Wakefern.
There we go. Yeah, you know, I just wanted to I had one more other thing to bring on, and that's, you know, we've become such a litigious society, and it's as a result, our food quality laws have become incredibly stringent. And I'm going to just give you a personal example, and that's I was recently at a wedding, and it was a great happy hour, lots of food, and I said, you know what? I'm pretty much done eating. I'm just going to order my dinner and I'm going to take that home. They would not let me take it home. And they didn't let anybody take their dinners home. They basically collected what was left over and it got thrown out. or maybe recycled, whatever, their process is. I don't know exactly, but my point is that, as we can't forget the other side of the pendulum. We're so, right now we are at a point where I think that we've become overzealous with regards to food safety, and I think this is a great point in that we have to really kind of look at those things and say, hey, has the pendulum swung too far on that as a result of all these food safety laws, are we now wasting more food? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Next up, we have Gyro Gonzalez from NJCC. Hi, Gyro.
Good morning. This is me. Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody's input here on the obstacles. I think we've spoken about many of the issues, not only on this call, but last week's call, permitting, education, awareness, funding, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, I'm with the New Jersey Composting Council and the New Jersey Organics Recycling Foundation, and our job is, after the donation, the food needs to be taken somewhere. This education, we wanted to, or I feel that as we do across the nation with our organization, the regulator is always very close to us in our training activities. Awareness of the processes, of the technologies, of the new case studies that we've heard here in some cases. We're holding courses, and I think we mentioned this last time about a 40-hour course that we do 5 days for across the nation. We see regulators like the DPs in other states participate in these courses. If we are in North Carolina, or if we're in California, or even in New York, there's a participation from the DEP Solid Waste Division, Air and Stormwater as well, where they take these courses, which are pretty extensive. As I said, they're 40-hour courses, and it helps that department understand a lot of these opportunities that are out there, both technological as well as educational and case studies. So we invite, as I'm not saying it's an obstacle yet, but I think the DEP in New Jersey needs to have a little more of this exposure to educational formats like the ones we have that other agencies across the nation are taking advantage of. Thank you.
Thanks, Gyro. We will definitely take that under advisement. Our next speaker is Andrew at Trenton Renewables. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. How are you today?
Doing well, and yourself?
Excellent. Good, thanks. Just want to make sure my mic was working there.
You got it.
So I'm going to build on Sandra and Chris's comments a little bit earlier about kind of donation and potentially some of the obstacles there, and just sort of mention some of our current practices that we've spun up over the last few months. And actually before that, I work with Trenton Renewables, the company that operates the Trenton Biogas anaerobic digestion facility. So on the back of those anecdotes, I'd love just to kind of present or just ask the group their thoughts on how we can kind of accelerate some of this bottom-up kind of organization that we're trying to facilitate on our end. And so specifically, I'd say about 5 to 10% actually in this month of the material that comes to us is actually, we're actually the second or third stop for a given truck. And the way this works is we're working with generators of waste such as food manufacturers and warehouses and the like, and orchestrating hauling for those customers, and actually having that trailer or that tractor stop at food donation centers and food banks and the like on its way to us. And so effectively what that happens is it allows for us to reduce the cost and the complexity of donating food, both for the customers, the generators of the food waste, as well as for the food banks, while kind of providing a backstop for any material that doesn't necessarily have the level of demand that was expected, or isn't suitable for donation and the like. And so rather than have multiple parties go to a given grocery store or to a given warehouse or wherever it may be, and kind of pick through the material that's there, et cetera, the way that we're seeing a lot of success is having, the generator of waste or material that's potentially suitable for donation, just put everything that is a candidate for, those two different types of outlets into a trailer and just send it basically across a daisy chain of different outlets over the course of the day, and say 80-90% of the material is ultimately donated, and then we receive the remaining 20 or 10%, say at 4 o'clock after multiple stops. And so this is something that we're kind of just brute forcing on our end as the anaerobic digester, just kind of recognizing that we're here to support the layers that are above us in the food recovery hierarchy. And again, the ask here is like, how can we make this more scalable, understanding that, we need to, develop independent relationships with all the different food banks. We have to discover that information. We need to do kind of qualification work and kind of development work on that end. It would be great to have consolidated resources and maybe sort of a co-organized kind of group to kind of help facilitate, again, these daisy chains that allow for more food to go to discount channels, to donation and the like, and then B, can make sure that we're not sending any material to landfill that doesn't necessarily need to. And so that's just, again, an anecdote and then just an ask to the group, just like how can we better scale that?
It sounds like one of the biggest obstacles from hearing from all of you is just getting the food out of that recycling and waste stream, because it's still usable. And as you all are discussing the different ideas, it's bringing to mind, I don't know if you've seen it on television lately, there was this commercial about ugly food, and there's this poor little red pepper that's not quite right with the little googly eyes, waiting to actually like go to a food bank or go to a grocery store because it's still good. And I think it's personally, I think it's wonderful that you guys are looking to do that and prevent that food waste. And just, I feel lucky enough to be able to hear all this good information from all of you. And on behalf of the department, we're really benefiting from all of this great information too. So I just want to thank all of you for all of your interaction today so far. Sorry for the Judy anecdote. I just wanted to get that out there. So thank you very, very much, Andrew, for your insights. I'd like to move on to Bill Such. Morning, Bill. Bill, are you there? There you are. Good
Great.
morning.
Hi, my name's Bill Suchadolsky, actually, and I know that this presentation, which was very informative, was focused on the producers of these materials, as opposed to the beneficial reusers of these materials. In the wastewater industry, there's a great potential, and I think two of the entities, or the two entities that are receiving food waste at present, are aware of that. I'm certain the DEP is aware of that. However, at present, there's, I think, only two facilities that are handling these materials, one in Elizabeth and one in Trenton. And I think consideration needs to be given down the line, I'm certain it will be, to wastewater treatment entities that have anaerobic digestion and produce biogas for beneficial reuse. And that could potentially necessitate having more food processing facilities distributed throughout the state, so the hauling, which your rule or law covers, the 25 miles, minimizes the hauling of these materials. For instance, I know that nationwide some entities have installed food waste receiving facilities at the wastewater treatment plant so that they can then utilize that material in anaerobic digesters for production of biogas and beneficial reuse thereof. So I just want to strongly encourage everybody on this call to remember the wastewater treatment entities throughout the state, because at present, private industry, as is usually the case, is taking the lead on this. To build a food waste receiving facility at a wastewater treatment plant is probably an expensive venture, and I'm not so sure there's any wastewater entities that would want to do that, because it's also technically complex, particularly if you listen to the facility in Elizabeth, which is a basic facility, but complex nonetheless. So I just wanted to point out, let's not forget the wastewater entities and the wastewater businesses, and particularly those that produce energy from biogas today. With regard to food waste, might enhance that biogas, increase the biogas, and increase the benefit of utilizing that biogas. Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much for your comments. Next up, we have Lauren Lastimosa.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi again. So I don't know if other haulers can relate to this, but as a micro hauler, one of the obstacles that we have found was being able to keep our prices within 10% of what businesses are currently paying for their waste collection. So I would anticipate that a lot of generators will be able to apply for a waiver in this sense and not have to recycle their food waste, because businesses like mine or other micro haulers, I'm not sure about other haulers again, but so we can't really operate without operating at a loss at 10% of what other waste collection haulers are charging. So that's been one of our obstacles, and thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much for your input. Do we have any more comments or questions regarding challenges and obstacles? Next up, George Tyler. Hi again, George.
Hi, I just wanted to respond briefly to what Bill Such suggested, which is a very, very good suggestion. I'm sure someone in the department's working with the authorities, Association of Environmental Authorities. I work with the AEA, and certainly some of their members are heavily into food waste digestion in their existing digestion facilities, and it's a great suggestion. I think that the department exploit that further by working with the association or the individual members. I know Landis, for example, I don't know if anybody's on, down in Vineland has had a food waste recycling and I guess digestion operation for many years. They sort of beat the rest of us to the punch on that. So I just offer that.
Thanks for your insights, George. Next, we have Brian Blair.
Hi, back again. Thank you. So this has been really informative, even as like a processing facility. This is just informative and I think healthy. I want to congratulate folks at the DEP for I'm not sure that you will see a lot of state participation, even though the various DEPs are involved in these programs. I just think you guys are doing a great job kicking all of these pieces together. And I enjoy problem solving, the process of it. And I think we've just, as you get to the end of this presentation and you start talking about what the hurdles are and the problems, you're basically lining up a bunch of dominoes here. And you're realizing all of these different pathways, right, for continuous improvement. And following the food hierarchy is essential, right, to sustainability. And then as we talk about how we can improve and get better at feeding people and feeding animals, and and then getting the energy, I think, out of the material is important. And all of these things create new pathways, new things to think about, and we're putting it out there right now. And it feels like a lot of us in this group are taking some ownership to solving these problems and looking at them, and I enjoy that. I think that's the way things should be. Being effective is a struggle because everything takes time, right? You knock over a domino, you've got another one. And but I think everybody here is certainly here because they want to do the right thing. And I just want to raise another issue. When you talk about hurdles, is economics is always an issue. Like it's great to want to do, and it's great to want to motivate people, but economics drive that. It's hard to lose money to do the right thing. So it's important that the programs that are put in place are economically viable. And so then I'm going to turn this into a more of a plug, but just so that you understand, there's another facet to the food waste piece in New Jersey that I think is still completely not maximized. So there's a lot of packaged food that it doesn't make it into that source separated organics bin because it's packaged. There's a bunch of different examples, but I know the grocery store folks out there know what I'm talking about, and sometimes that's not right for going to the animal feedlot or to the land application because of the packaging, and it's too expensive to take it out, and it becomes kind of a problem. But it's a large chunk of the food. So at our facility and at the core facility, we can extract that material from the packaging, and then we weigh it, right? So we know by weight what you have in residuals, and by weight what you had in the organics. I think that's important because that weight is what you're paying for when it goes off to the landfill, and these facilities that are operating now are less expensive than the landfills. So there's an economic driver there that makes it sensible to take that packaged stuff out, get it into the stream where you can weigh it and get credit for it. You can get the energy out of the food, and it's just one more pathway to think about and know that's out there. I just wanted to share that. And again, thank you all for this.
Thanks so much, Brian. We appreciate your support. Next up, Wayne DeFeo. Hi again, Wayne.
Hello again. I just wanted to make one comment on the biogas things. I think it's great that we can utilize potentially the way the law was written, food waste as a feedstock into sewage treatment plants to create biogas. The only thing I think the department has to be very cognizant of is that's a great idea. It can help with resiliency of these plants. There are plants that do this today where they can generate electricity right on site during a power outage. However, the only caveat I would add is that great idea. However, there has to be a requirement that any sewage treatment plant receiving this material, if they want to be considered as an alternative, which they should be, must utilize the gas and cannot flare it. Because if that occurs, then we've done nothing more than create air pollution. That's the only thing I would say. That stipulation has to be put into that option.
All right. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much for your input. Do we have any additional people who want to speak about this topic? If not, okay. It's been a really great one. We got a lot of mileage out of that one. I'm going to toss back to Dana for our next slide.
Yeah, our last and final discussion point. Thank you so much, everyone, for that one. But as we move on to slide 19, I wanted to discuss the waiver process. The law identifies clearly the condition upon which a large food waste generator can petition for a waiver from the source separation and recycling requirements of the law. More specifically, waivers may be petitioned if the cost of transporting the source-separated food waste plus the fee charged by an authorized food waste recycling facility is at least 10% more than the cost of transporting the food waste for disposal as solid waste plus the disposal fee charged for solid waste disposal in the state for non-contract commercial waste at a properly licensed disposal facility like transfer station, sanitary landfill facility, incinerator, or resource recovery facility. So if a large food waste generator petitions the department for a waiver, the petitioner is required to provide notice to any authorized food waste recycling facility located within 25 miles of the large food waste generator, and that facility will be granted an opportunity to participate in the proceedings before the department. The statute allows for the waiver, but currently there is no formal waiver process. We are contemplating the approach we will take to entertain waivers, and we will be developing the waiver process via rule. That said, even if we cannot issue a decision on a petition for waiver prior to rule promulgation, if you feel like you have to provide information supporting a waiver, you can send the request our way. Either way, we are seeking your thoughts about that process, including what type of relevant information and documentation you can supply to adequately compare the costs or show that a cost analysis was conducted. So, anybody has any thoughts?
All right. Please raise your hand if you have any thoughts and would like to discuss the waiver process issue. We have George Tyler. Hi again, George.
Hi. I just wanted to throw in that if you're going to develop rules, that's going to take a long time, of course. You have a fairly excellent Office of Dispute Resolution, and as at least an ad hoc, maybe a long-term solution, if you get a petition in the meantime and you need to bring in a facility, that would be a good stopgap to refer the case there and have at least have an attempt at a mediated solution.
Very astute point, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else looking for hands? I hope all of you aren't talked out yet. Oh no, you might be. I don't see any additional hands being raised to discuss the waiver oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Thank you. We have Isaac Berg from NJCC.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that, obviously we want to see a real effort and attempt to have, sought out the different options and opportunities. So, I think that there's obviously two different real ways that you can, fall outside of this process. One is that there's no available facilities at a relevant cost, and the other is that you don't fit the weight, the tonnage requirement. And so the tonnage requirement, I think, can be a fairly standard calculation Wayne talked about earlier. If that can be supported with actual weights that you're doing and measuring, great. But at least that there is a standard calculation that can be used. So that portion I don't think is terribly difficult to sort of prove or provide documentation for. The other one is the cost, and I think we kind of have an idea of what some of the facilities are and what the other methods are, and so we'd like to see some sort of actual effort put in, that we contacted the facilities, we contacted different methods, and this is what we found. This is why we don't think we can do it in a relevant cost. I'm sure Gary, who's just raised his hand, has some good thoughts on this, so I'll let him go from there.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Actually, before we hear from Gary, we're going to hear from Adam Bieder.
Thank you. I would preface my comment by saying, Hackensack Meridian Health is absolutely committed to appropriate food waste reduction and disposal. But in the short term, it may be necessary to apply for a waiver. And just wanted to point out your comment in introducing this subject. You mentioned that the local food waste recycler would be provided an opportunity to, I guess, respond if a waiver application was submitted. I think in our evaluation here, one of the major obstacles that we have noted is it's actually the hauler cost that appears to be much higher than typical waste hauler, as opposed to the actual the food waste recycler. So I'd be curious how the department intends to handle comparing hauler cost among vendors that are serving food waste.
All right, thank you, Adam. Appreciate your comment. Now we'll hear from Gary Sondermeyer. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Judith. Thank you very much once again. I have just since this is kind of like last call on comments, just a general comment that was actually triggered by George Tyler. The department, I think, did a great thing in the beginning of this process to sort of throw out a general question of what should we be focusing on as we go through this process. And I'm sure many folks contributed to that, and I certainly made a submission on behalf of the organizations I represent. But George had triggered the thought, and I just wanted to make the point, since we have this wonderful opportunity, that to the extent possible, I think the department should look at not doing rulemaking. That many of the topics that are on the menu or what's going to be considered, I think, could be done through guidance. And I'm very, very concerned about how long it takes to go through the rulemaking process. We really need more expeditious action to do all the things we talked about on this call today: feeding hungry people, reforming, what we need to, getting guidance out on education. Most of those things actually can be done outside the realm of rulemaking. So I really would want to put out that I think the department really should look at focusing on getting materials out and in place, and just the bare minimum on the number of topics that actually require the rulemaking process, because of really the nature of the Administrative Procedures Act and how long it takes to get through that entire process. It is just simply way too long. Thank you, Judith.
Duly noted. Thanks so much, Gary. Do we have any additional hand raisers? Any additional comments, questions? Hi, Gyro. Gyro Gonzalez from the NJCC.
Yes, thank you. By the way, my name is pronounced Jairo. It's
Jairo.
Yeah, Jairo.
Do you roll your R a little bit?
Yeah.
Jairo.
But it's the J that confuses everybody.
Okay.
It's pronounced Jairo. Anyway, so yeah, I want to say on behalf of the council that we concur with Gary in this sense, and I think my colleague Isaac Berg brought up a topic that's in guidance. We are looking for guidances versus rulemaking. I think Gary lays out the work. He, as a former DEP, he understands this. We suffer it all day long. So we think that the guidance is, and for that, the council is prepared. We have, as I said, the training, the documentation, the experience, not only in the state but nationwide, to bring these guidelines to you and to your team that is developing these waiver processes. But that's the comment I wanted to leave.
Jairo, thank you very, very much. Does anyone else have any further comments or questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I think we might be sold. Dana, back to you.
Yeah, so basically I want to open the floor if you have something to add, or we haven't covered anything that you would like to discuss. We have about a half hour, so please share your thoughts and comments. And again, if you're more comfortable sending comments via email, please do. This is only the beginning of the process. It is our intention to hold additional stakeholder meetings in the coming months, and actually we're looking to schedule a meeting towards the end of January. So if there are any conferences or conflicts, please let us know. And on that note, I thank you all so very much for participating in today's meeting.
Just one more administrative hit. with regard to the summaries of the topics and today's recording, they're going to be available at the DEP Workgroup's website, and Tyrone has put the links to those particular sites in the chat, as well as a link to the food waste recycling law information page from the department. So if you guys want to double check in your chat function, there's additional information in there for you. Having the floor open, we have one more hand raised from Chris Foote. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Yeah, just one, I think, final question from me. In terms of compliance and enforcement, can you share any details exactly what that's going to look like? For example, I know in Massachusetts, their food waste law has been in place since 2014. The way they conduct compliance is at the landfills. When the trash compactors come in, they inspect the contents of a trash compactor, and then they will trace that back to where that compactor came from. Should we expect something similar in New Jersey, or is it going to be an on-site inspection with an individual coming in? And the reason I ask is we're not concerned about being in compliance, but we just want to know what to expect or what we should have ready for an assessor. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Chris. Let's see, I'm going to toss this to Sonia.
Compliance and enforcement. Oh, sorry, compliance and enforcement. That was my cue. I'm with the Compliance and Enforcement Division for solid waste, haz waste, and underground tanks. At this point, the plan is envisioned for enforcement to happen closer to the local level predominantly. Not to say department won't be out there, but that's the plan at this point. And also geared at an on-site level. So we're most likely would be visiting the generators to see, you know, what your records are you source separating? Based on the authorities in the law, that's the approach at this point. The details, you know, will remain to be worked out through this rulemaking process. Does that answer all your questions?
Probably raises more, because you said enforcement will be on the local level, most likely. So that means there's probably going to be quite a bit of variation from location to location. If you're leaving it up to a town, municipality, or county, our experience is that they all tend to do something a little bit different than one another.
Duly noted, and understand the concern, yes. Well, so it's county at this point would be where we're seeking inspections from.
Okay, I guess what I would ask is this: when that is ironed out, if where we're doing business, if the county could reach out to us and just let us know what to expect. We just don't want any surprises, or if they're talking to the wrong person at the stores, not giving them the answers that they're looking for. We just want to avoid that. So if there's, you know, whatever that audit, inspection, assessment is going to look like, just so we can prepare our folks at each of the individual stores.
Certainly we can work on that outreach and communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, Wayne DeFeo.
Chris, in part answer to your question or your concern, which I would agree with, from the perspective that I would look at it from Essex, if you're recycling food waste and meeting that criteria of recycling, if you just simply report that with your tonnage grant, what will happen is most of our towns will be looking at you reporting, let's say, to Wakefern, wherever, or any store, reporting to the town or through the county. We've allowed for regional reporting. If you've reported the food waste, then from our perspective, you would be in compliance. Just to give you context. So your recycling reporting would cover you both ways as far as I'm concerned in Essex.
Wayne,
thank you.
Wayne. Thank you for your information. Next is Carol T.
So Wayne gave the Essex County perspective. I'll give the Middlesex County perspective because you did rightly point out that every county does it a little bit different. I do know that we have a CHI agency that does recycling generator inspections. They're very active. They have 2 to 3 inspectors that go out each day and track recycling and make sure the generators are recycling. I am aware that in their last work plan, they are required to do generator inspections for food waste. They are supposed to pick 5 generators, so I believe the question is valid, and that hopefully they'll be getting some guidance from the DEP as to how these inspections are supposed to be handled.
Thank you very much, Carol. Do we have any further questions? Questions, comments, concerns? I don't see any. On behalf of the Department of Environmental Protection and the Site Remediation and Waste Management Program, I thank you all so much for attending today's stakeholder presentations and discussions. It's been a very fruitful discussion of everything food waste. Like Dana had said in the beginning, this is just the first step in our stakeholder process. We'll definitely be talking to all of you again. And until then, please stay safe out there and have a great December. Thank you.